Hey, pretty little lifters. Welcome to season 2 of the podcast. During my month off in between seasons, I enjoyed my spring break. I had some downtime and it was so nice. I had a staycation at our friend's place and we got to babysit their adorable bulldog. So that was really fun. I got to see some friends who were in LA, and LA finally had some warmer weather. So I was very excited. I had some pool time. And when I have sunshine and warmer weather, I feel like my best self. I feel like I saw a lot of people posting about like, was it depression or what? Did I just need some sunshine? Maybe a little of both, but I was very, very excited to get to relax and recharge. And now, of course, that it's starting to get warmer, you're starting to see more fitness and diet advertisements for bikini bodies, beach bodies, and summer bodies. And that's going to be our topic for our first episode of this season. I've been seeing a lot of them, and probably my Instagram is more geared towards the fitness and health space, so that I probably see them more than most people. But it definitely made me do some reflecting on the topic, and I started thinking about what I used to think about these type of advertisements and like pressure to look a certain way during a season, how my thoughts have shifted, and where I am now. One thing I've been thinking a lot about is how when you're breaking free of old thoughts and pressures, it's really easy to go from one extreme totally to another extreme. And then I feel like after you do that, you kind of find some middle ground. So I think that's kind of where I am right now. So I'm going to give you some background of like where my experience is with this season and then where my thinking is about it now. So growing up in the late 90s, early 2000s, summer meant six-pack abs, socially acceptable bodies in bikinis, which meant thin bodies. And other bodies that did not fit the beauty standard would be shamed for being in bikinis. And you saw so many advertisements about getting your shredded summer bodies. It was just like everywhere. I remember this growing up. You'd watch TV shows, you'd hear jokes about certain bodies being at the beach in swimwear. A lot of those things would not fly today on certain shows. So it is kind of funny when you watch things from that era. Because it would probably not fly now. We've come a long way from then to 2023. There is way more body acceptance and positivity. We've heard sayings like every body is a beach body or a bikini body. So we're trying to be more inclusive. Like literally it's that, if you have a body, put a bikini on it, bikini body, And we're starting to see more women of all sizes embracing all types of swimwear, and I'm here for it. I love having more swimwear for diverse body types. Swimwear brands are also becoming more inclusive on their sizing as well as their designs. I do still hear people suggest that brands still need to be more inclusive with their designs, but overall, I do think it's better now than it was when I was growing up. So I started thinking more about my relationship with this whole notion of beach body, summer body. And as a kid, I was in a swimsuit as much as possible. I'm a summer baby. I'm born in August. I love the weather. I love pools and beaches. So this was just something like ever since I was a little kid, it was just a part of me. I took swimming lessons like really young, learned how to swim. And it's just always been, I'm also live in Southern California, so we have amazing weather. And it's just always been something I had a like swimsuit collection just literally since I was young. And whether I was swimming as a kid or running through the sprinklers in the backyard, I didn't start becoming self-conscious in my swimwear until I started puberty. And I think that's usually when it kind of starts for most people. Your body hair changes, you start growing and you're changing shapes. And I definitely started to become more aware of like what I looked like. And, it does. It kind of just shifts your like, we're just in our swimsuits, we're playing, we're having fun to like, I'm now very aware that I'm not wearing a lot of clothing and I'm trying to do something fun at the same time. When I was a teen and later going into college, I remember thinking that my thighs were too big. Newsflash, they weren't. Um, High body dysmorphia. And I would get a little self-conscious. And I remember being more self-conscious, like, for example, about like my chest size, because a lot of the ads that I would see of like bikini models or celebrities in swimsuits, they were, thin girls with full chests, like, and so that's what I was used to seeing. That was the image I thought, okay, this is what the ideal bikini body looks like. You're thin, you have a chest, and that was just the ideal that was presented to me at the time. So that's what I thought I needed to fit. Later, you had a design shift. And I know it's different in other places, but like I'm speaking here in California, that's when like Brazilian cut bottoms and thongs started like popping up. And I know they were worn in other countries, but like they weren't as much in Southern California. So it was like kind of shocking because you'd go to the beach. I remember being probably like in college and going to the beach and seeing like maybe out of the whole area that I was in laying out, like maybe one brave woman would be in a thong, and you were like, oh my gosh, like what are they wearing? And instantly, like, I remember having negative thoughts about that, like, whoa. And that was kind of the thing back then. Like, it wasn't as accepted as it is today here. I'm speaking, reminder, I'm in Southern California, and this is like my experience here. But it was interesting to kind of see this shift. And I remember I had this thought the other day, and I remember shopping for like a two-piece bathing suit. And it was not very easy in the early 2000s because they were sold as pairs. So you buy let's say you bought a medium, it would be a medium top and a medium bottom. It wasn't like it is today where you can go in the stores and there's just like racks of bikini tops, all sizes, racks of bottoms, all sizes. Like they were literally on the same hanger, like in a set. And I remember I was like a small on top and a medium on bottom. And I would low key like find the swimsuit I like, and I would kind of find a corner where like no salesperson was around, and I would switch them. So I would find like a small and a medium and like do a little swap and then go to purchase it. And I would just like hope that the salesperson did not notice that I switched the size. Most of the time it worked. There was definitely a couple times where they're like, oh, you switched the sizes. We need to switch this. And I was like, ugh. And, that was like a whole nother thing. But I'm definitely more grateful to how they are now. So you can mix and match. And, we're starting to recognize like this, it's not a one size fits all approach. I was so shy to wear revealing bottoms because I started getting a little more self-conscious of like any stretch marks or cellulite. Like I remember having stretch marks in junior high, just from growing. And I felt like I didn't look perfect. And when I think about it, it's like, why was I aware of stretch marks or cellulite? And it was because of the fitness and diet ads. Like I would hear that. Like I never really heard my mom talk about it. She never really commented that way on her body, which was great. But I would hear it from just movies and television and magazines. People magazine would like do those specials of like worst and best bikini bodies. Like that's what I grew up with. That's what millennials grew up with, seeing those side by sides. And I can't even imagine having a photo of myself in a magazine under like best or worst bikini bodies. Like the mental, damage that could do to somebody. It's wild, but like that's what we grew up with. That's what we saw. And when we would look at like the worst bikini bodies, for those of you that can't see me on video, I'm doing air quotes on worse. They would show cellulite, maybe their thighs were a little bigger, but they all looked great. And that's what, like, looking back on it, it's like, wow, that was such a wild time. Like, no wonder there were so many eating disorders. No wonder, like, so many people, like, of that bracket, like those millennials were like all recovering from this because this is literally what we were fed, right? In magazines, in TV shows, and in the media. So I do think about that. Like, that kind of stuff is learned. I probably would have never thought about myself of like stretch marks or cellulite if that wasn't something that was learned by the media because, like I said, I wasn't learning it at home. In my 20s and 30s, every spring became getting ready for beach season. The marketing and the ads were always there to remind me it's bikini season. I'd take fitness classes and the coaches would try to push us in class and remind us, you got to get shredded for summer, or let's lean out for beach season, or let's burn that fat. It's time for summer bodies, right? Like this was the messaging that I was hearing. So getting ready for summer became normal. Like that just became like, okay, it's spring, got to get ready for summer bodies. Like that was just like part of the year, part of the season, right? And it was normalized. And this is when I wanted to be my leanest. I'd been spending so much time in a swimsuit. So like 20s and 30s, I was like, okay, I want to be lean. I wish everyone felt comfortable in their skin to enjoy the summer season, the pool or the beach, the activities without like the shame and the fear of what other people are saying about them. But I know it's hard. Building that confidence for my students who have very diverse body types is super important to me. And I'd love to hear from anyone to know what has helped you make that shift, because I want to make sure that I can do that with my students. I'm doing it through movement. I'm doing it through conversations like this. You know, I talk about this stuff with them too, so that they can understand kind of like the history of like where this is coming from, and like just being aware of this stuff so that they don't have to subscribe to it as well. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about like my past thinking when it comes to like this whole notion of like summer bodies and bikini bodies. And then I'm going to shift into like where I kind of went from there and then where I am now. So my past thinking, I wanted to be shredded and lean and have a hot beach body. It was everything, right? And I do think that this kind of does coincide with like your late teens, early 20s. Like that's kind of the time I think that like a lot of people put that like aesthetics, right? Like you're out of college and you're kind of more independent, you're starting to date. So I think it is kind of natural for that to happen around that time. But that was like very important to me. I wanted to look like the celebrities and bikini models that I would see in the ads. I wanted to look perfect. For me back then, my thinking was like my body was connected to my worth and a reflection of like you as a person, right? Like how you were, how you lived. And I was definitely easily influenced by fitness and diet, you know, summer marketing, because it was just everywhere. It was in your face, and I would see it and I'm like, okay, oh my gosh, yes, time to work on my summer body. What is this new thing I need to do? Do I need to try this workout? Like, what is the thing I need to do? Was open to looking for quick fixes during this time to lean out, right? I wanted to look a certain way. And there was definitely a need for like, I need a visible six pack. I wanted a visible six pack because that was just part of the bikini body package, right? So that was my past thinking. And I would say that was definitely more of like my early college years into my 20s and kind of going into my 30s. Like this is all sort of connected to my fitness too. In season 1 of the podcast, I did an episode, I'll link it in the show notes, but I did an episode on like how I shifted from aesthetics training to performance and health training. And I definitely think that shift also coincided with this type of thinking. So when I did start making this shift, my thinking on this topic also shifted, right? My thinking of like the summer body shifted away from aesthetics as my number one priority. So when I made that shift with like my workouts, my thinking kind of shifted too. So now during this time, my thinking was I can maintain a healthy body that can perform year round, not only for a season. I do think this one was really important because it kind of took away the power of like one season of my life. And I did like that. I also wasn't as influenced by fitness and diet summer marketing as I used to be during this time. But I did still want to be a bit leaner than I was during, you know, it's still summer season. I knew it was, but it wasn't the priority. And I think that's the biggest shift, the biggest difference. I also gained confidence in my own skin because I appreciated what my body could do. That started, I feel like when that happened, that's when I was more open and more confident to wearing like smaller bikinis and different like designs and cuts that I used to be so insecure to wear. Like I remember like I would go to shops, I'd try something and I'd be like, no, there's no way I could wear this. Like I would be so embarrassed. People are going to look at me. People are going to comment that like I'm not lean enough for this. Like those were the thoughts. And then I just remember one summer and I was just like, you know what? I'm going to go for it. Like I'm having fun. I work out all year. Like I feel good in my skin and I haven't looked back. I love bikini shopping. It's like one of my favorite things now. During this time too, because remember, I said you kind of like when you're shifting and growing in your thoughts, you can kind of go from one extreme to the other. So one extreme I kind of shifted into is I was very anti-summer diet and fitness marketing. I did not like it. I saw it as cheap and easy, a way to get money from customers by reaching their pain points. And I think this was very important for me to recognize. I think it was very important for me to wake up and start to pay attention and to be a critical consumer and be like, oh, I get it. Like, I get what they're doing. The marketing ideas behind this, like they are looking for insecurities. They know that people are insecure in swimsuits. They're trying, like I saw it. So I think that was like really important for me to kind of find that shift. But like I said, I was very like anti-summer marketing. And I, used to write for blogs and I would do this stuff. Like I would write content where it was like, get your summer body. Like I was a part of that. And I remember when I was shifting my personal beliefs and like shifting away from aesthetics into more of a performance health, like I kind of struggled with that too. I was like, ooh, it's so easy to pitch it this way, but I kind of don't believe that anymore. So I kind of had this internal struggle too, where I was trying to find the balance of like, well, I'm going this way, but this is what sells. This is where people still are. So it was like trying to find that balance too. So now let's talk about like my current thinking, where I am now when it comes to hearing and seeing all this type of marketing. I've had time to grow and reflect, and I was looking at like my past thoughts and stuff, and I still think it's easier to maintain my healthy body year round with habits and routines than trying to hurry up and look a certain way for one season. There is so much less pressure to get ready for one season when you're just consistent year round. And that's one thing that I've made a priority for myself and my life is just to be consistent, to have these habits that align well with me, that make me feel good, because I don't have this pressure to like, oh my gosh, the season is coming. I need to look a certain way. I'm going to be at the beach. I'm going to be at the pool. Like, it's just different now. And I like that it's just like, no, I have these routines. I feel good all year. And of course, like there's going to be some shifts and fluctuations throughout the year in your body composition, but overall, there is consistency. And there isn't this need for like some drastic change when you get to one season. I'm still a critical consumer of diet culture, so I can still see through ads for fitness and health businesses. This is one of their money-making seasons, and I can spot the language and intention. So that is something that I carried over when I was, thinking about all of this stuff and growing and changing. So this is something that has shifted. I can take a class and hear a coach make a reference to a summer body, and I can separate that from my workouts. And I know that I'm not working out to look good for summer. I'm here because I want to be healthy. It's healthy for my body, and I want to perform better. I also know it's my habits outside of the gym that is probably going to help me more with my body composition shift. And I don't want my workouts too attached to aesthetics for me personally, right? Because that can mess with my head too much. So that was a really cool shift for me, because when I was kind of in that middle phase of like growing and changing, I was just like, oh my gosh, they're using this marketing tactics. They're talking about this in their class. This is so cheap and easy. And now I can just like acknowledge, okay, that's what they're doing, but I can separate it from what I'm doing. And I think that's the important key. It's like it doesn't faze me as much anymore, which is great, because I go in there with a different intention, and I don't need to subscribe to that if that's not serving me right now. I now think it's okay to want to shift your body composition as summer approaches, but doing it in quick, unhealthy ways, I don't vibe with. You don't have to change your body for a season if you don't want to. And I think that's a really important thing to think about, because there is so much marketing, there is so much pressure. You are seeing it everywhere. But guess what? If you don't want to, you don't have to. It's your body, and you know your body. And maybe you're in a place where you're like, I'm good and I can still enjoy my summer. I can still enjoy the season and being at a pool and being at a beach, and I'm good. Do you? You do not have to subscribe to any of the pressures or marketing that's out there right now. So this summer, I am going to Italy, going to be at the Amalfi Coast in June, and I'm going to be pretty much living in a swimsuit. Do I want to shift my body composition a little bit before this trip? Yes, I do. Is there anything wrong with that? No. I've created good, sustainable habits for myself that I don't need to double up on workouts, do a juice cleanse, go on a fad diet, or do a ton of cardio. I don't need to do any of that. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to continue with my training routine. I have a really good training routine. I like it. I've been doing it all year. We're going to keep it going. I have 3 strength training days. I do 1 day of like Pilates or yoga and 1 cardio-based class. I am going to cut back on alcohol for the month of May. I think just for 1 month, I'd like to make it through the month without really drinking alcohol. Like I said, April was my spring break, so we had a little bit of fun, a little too much fun, but that's just an easy way that I can reel it back a little bit. I'm going to keep getting good sleeps, good quality sleeps, and focusing on lowering my stress levels. I'm going to cook more meals at home. I ate out a lot in April. It also gets really pricey, so I'm just going to focus on meal prepping more and eating some weekend dinners at home too. I mean, of course, that doesn't mean I won't go out ever, but I think just cooking at home more also makes my stomach feel better. If any of you have been following me on Instagram, you know I've been dealing with SIBO, which I will do another future episode about because that's its own podcast episode. But it also makes my stomach feel better when I have a little more control over the types of food that I'm eating and what ingredients are going into it. I'm also going to focus on eating more protein. I'm trying to consume my body weight in grams of protein daily. So that's something I'm going to keep up. I don't count calories, I don't do macros, but that is one area that I notice when I do keep up with my protein. It helps me build muscle and I just feel stronger, I perform better, so I'm definitely going to be keeping an eye on my protein intake. I also am going to intentionally walk more. Now, I'm a PE teacher, I'm walking around campus all day long during the school week, but it's still not enough in terms of like intentional walking. So I want to do more like maybe a walk before school or a walk when I get home, like just walking, listening to a podcast where I can just like decompress, de-stress, and just not like sitting so much. So just little things like that. Doesn't have to be anything crazy, but just like getting some fresh air a little bit more throughout the day outside of my job. So I want you to notice the only thing I'm really cutting back on or decreasing is alcohol and eating out as much. So it feels really good to be in a place like this because I think Tiffany in the past would have been so focused on eating less, being less, doing less to look a certain way. And now I'm like, no, I've got good movement patterns built into my week. I've got good habits that I really enjoy that make me feel good. So it's just now being able to do these tiny little tweaks, tiny little shifts that aren't going to take away from my, weekly life or feeling happy. They're also sustainable things. Like this is nothing to me, this is nothing crazy that I'm trying to do, right? And for any of you that do want to shift your body composition a little bit, because you just want to feel more comfortable in your skin, think about these little things that I'm sharing with you instead of fad diets or a program that's promising to get you shredded in like 3 or 4 weeks, right? This is a long game, and making these little shifts are going to be sustainable, and that's what we want. If you're noticing that summer body marketing is really getting to you negatively, I feel you. I've been there. And it's taken some work for me to get to a different place mentally where I see it as marketing and it's not something I need to participate in if I don't want to. You can focus instead on having a strong girl summer. Yes, have a strong girl summer. Have that be your focus instead of just like shredded, where it might be just putting too much pressure on you, right? And you will still be able to reap any aesthetic benefits if your healthy habits are in place. You don't have to deprive yourself of food or fun as the summer season approaches. Find a gym that feels supportive and that is not pressuring you to look a certain way if you are still healing from summer diet culture pressure. It's okay. Take a break if you need to. Find somewhere else. That's what helped me get to a place where I found some balance between both sides of the spectrum, right? Wanting to feel good during my favorite season and look a certain way, but also not wanting to feel like I needed to change and do all these crazy things to get there. I teach my students to be critical consumers of the fitness and health industry, and you can too. At the end of the day, they want your money. Let's be real, right? They want your money. They want a sale. So you get to decide what's worth it and what's not. And if something is making you feel bad about yourself, instead of empowered, switch it up, right? You get to decide. When you get to a place where you can see through marketing and the sales tactics, it's so much easier to disconnect it from your personal worth and just feel good about yourself. So I hope you can take away something from this topic, especially as you are scrolling on social media or watching something and you're hearing about, all these summer diet programs and everything kind of being thrown at you. Thanks for joining me for our first podcast episode of season 2. I really appreciate the support of the PLL community, and I am so grateful for you. DM me on Instagram if you want to share any thoughts on this topic. I would love to hear them. Make sure you're subscribed to the podcast. Follow me on Instagram and TikTok at The Pretty Little Lifters so that we can stay connected. I also have an email list that won't be spammy, I promise, and you can sign up for that at theprettylittlelifters.com. If you are a teacher and you want a PE or health lesson, I got you. Head over to Teachers Pay Teachers. I'm starting to grow lessons that I do with my students and put them there. So I'll be adding more over the next couple months. Talk to you next episode. Bye. And that wraps up this week's episode, team. Thanks to all you pretty little lifters for being a part of this conversation. Want to hear more of these convos? Subscribe to the podcast and leave a rate and review if this resonated with you. If you want to talk more about this topic, follow me on Instagram at The Pretty Little Lifters. And in case nobody told you this week, you are a strong, confident, gorgeous goddess, and you got this.